Evicted from my DIY fence, I transformed the HOA clubhouse into a pancake kingdom. Will I reclaim my freedom or become the neighborhood's unwitting clown in this absurd rebellion? Before we begin today's deranged HOA story, tell me you haven't had your fill of irrational and power-grabbing HOA nonsense. Smash that like button to show you're on my side, and drop a comment if you've ever faced off against an overbearing homeowners association. Be sure to subscribe and ring the notification bell, because this saga's only getting crazier from here. As the fervor from our impromptu pancake revolution simmered into the rich tapestry of our newly reinvigorated community spirit, I noticed Karen's posture, a veritable taut string, threatening to snap under the weight of her own expectations. Who knew a missing fence picket could incite such tumult? Still, her grand visions of managing the HOA had morphed into a comedic tragedy, and even the stuffiest HOA lifers were beginning to chuckle at her fuming antics. The clubhouse had morphed from mere housing for dusty meetings to a festive arena where all manner of culinary creations could fight back against drudgery. I couldn't help but savor the deliciously absurd spectacle unfolding before me, each giggle from my fellow revolters a delectable raspberry ripple through the pudding of our revolt. In a strategic masterstroke, I decided to lean into the chaos even further. Next on our culinary escapade is going to be Smoothie Saturday, I proclaimed, goosebumps rising with each word as they echoed off the walls. The crowd erupted into delirious laughter. And just like that, our Saturday plans seemed to jumble up into a rhapsody of flavors and drinks. We would whip up concoctions that blurred the lines between nourishment and whimsy, each blend more spectacular than the last. I envision a kale mango twist that'll knock the regulation rules right out of Karen's clipboard, I declared. And with that, the air was thick with promise and giggles. The irony wasn't lost on me. An HOA rep booted me from my home for a rogue fence picket, and now there I was, orchestrating a culinary coup de grace with a growing gaggle of newfound allies whose spirits burned brighter in rebellion against beige conformity. Amidst the banana peel battles and whirlwinds of spinach scandals, Mason pulled me aside with a sly grin dancing upon his lips. You know, for an outlaw living in a clubhouse, you're handling this whole revolution thing pretty well, he winked, teasing the unmistakable inner battles that had kept me on my toes. You could really rally the troops for a dessert defiance next, complete with cupcakes adorned in down with HOA frosting. I guffawed, half seriously considering Mason's ridiculous idea while imagining an unconstitutional 8-tiered cake looming against Karen's disarray. Suddenly, a booming voice cut through the culinary camaraderie like a blade destined for butter. Karen had finally passed the point of no return. Her head had turned into a storm cloud of indignation, and she was marching straight toward the laughter, with the fervor bespeaking only true earnestness. "Mason, Jordan, enough with the absurdity," she shouted, hands clenching against her clipboard like an anchor keeping her steadied within the turbulent waters of our uprising. It was almost humorous. She might as well have worn an attivator of oppression sash for all the goodness of her antics. "You can't turn this clubhouse into a circus. This is a violation of HOA standards." The moment felt electric. Her scorn was a firecracker, sparking a new wave of delight through the ranks of my pancake people. Victory was but a few well-placed warnings and my oversized spatula away. "Karen!" I shouted, raising my spatula high. "We are simply expanding the definition of community. Today we unite over brunch. Tomorrow, who knows? Maybe themed movie nights that will rock us into the cinematic future." My mind raced through ideas as whispers of movie Mondays filled the air. I could see Karen's eyes widening, her mind reeling as an irate volcano ready to erupt. "Does this chaos mean your bylaws are now up for negotiation, mighty HOA Empress?" I added, sweetly mocking as I took a small step forward. The crowd, inspired by my boldness, cheered louder, chanting, "Chaos is the new order." I nearly burst from pride. This unexpected subversion was a terrific seasoning to the recipe that was our unofficial rebellion against the curtain of Karen's authoritarian dreams. Yet in that dizzy moment of triumph, a low rumble began to thread through the jubilant atmosphere, a sound reminiscent of a storm brewing on the horizon. Had the glorious heavens of our pancake breakfast truly drawn the attention of the HOA's financial enforcers? What's next? Is there a memo about trench coats to hide all our illegal smoothie vices? I jested, leaning into the absurdity as the laughter rose even higher. But somewhere in the belly of the clubhouse's collective anticipation, I could feel it. The rumor mill was spinning, and anticipation was morphing into dread. It looked as though our joyful brigade might face a retaliatory showdown if the HOA didn't lose face. The stakes had never been this high, and like any good dramatic protagonist, I mustered resolve on my journey to keep the faith of my fellow rebels intact. With a rallying cry in my heart, I planned to take my mighty spatula forward to the ultimate face-off with the HOA. It was time to transform this eruption of pancake rebellion into the crescendo of our narrative. I had ignited the flames of camaraderie, and now we needed to funnel that energy into strategic defenses. Everyone, we are on the brink of a glorious coup. Next weekend, let's meet at the Clubhouse and fuse our delicious approaches to food with art and riotous rhythms. I paused momentarily, letting the crowd's enthusiasm take flight. We will hold a culinary carnival where each of you can showcase your talents. I'm talking everything from avant-garde art made of collard greens to PETA-approved desserts. I shouted as the roars of "Yes!" reverberated off the walls. Little did I know, this carnival would morph into something entirely unexpected, perhaps foreshadowing an epic confrontation worthy of any civil war. After all, who knew what kind of royal upheaval would follow in the aftermath of my spicy revolution? Now the question remained. Would we thrive together over the bounty of our dishes, or fall into the chaos of Karen's inevitable retaliation? The air crackled with anticipation as neighbors huddled together, their eyes glinting with mischief and ambition. A culinary carnival, eh? That has a certain ring to it. Mason's voice boomed over the crowd, a contagious grin flashing across his sun-kissed face. I can almost feel the festive vibes washing over our clubhouse. And just like that, his enthusiasm ignited a fresh wave of ideas spiraling around like a tornado. From my humble corner, flush with excitement, I watched the gears grind into motion. Neighbors detailed plans to hand-paint vegetable samurai warriors for snack tables and craft elaborate piñatas, all inspired by our newfound zest for rebellion. Fear transformed into fervent creativity. We were all in this together. Uneasy murmurs about Karen's impending wrath, however, lurked in the backdrop like a threatening shadow. As plans churned, a sudden wave of serenity washed over me, the kind you only experience when you're overwhelmed with hope and camaraderie. The clubhouse transformed into a vibrant canvas of ideas, the walls now echoing with laughter rather than the drudgery of bylaws. We could have jars full of jam, homemade of course, I blurted, excitement bubbling up. Let's seduce Karen to the other side with the allure of fresh blueberry preserves. Mason's laughter rolled through the space, and I'll juggle some organic tomatoes. Nothing says rebellion like wobbly produce. The absurdity of the entire situation fueled our spirits, igniting a secure bond among neighbors who had once feared the HOA like a lurking neighborhood bogeyman in the dark. We had inadvertently stitched a patchwork of alliances, united against the ridiculousness of our overbearing regulation. But just as momentum surged, Karen's stiff silhouette punctuated the doorway, hands firmly pressing against her ever-stressed hips. The upbeat energy died down, transforming our revelry into a chorus of nervous whispers. There she stood, the queen of conformity herself, simmering beneath the surface, ready to unleash catastrophe. "What in the world is going on here?" she demanded, eyes narrowing to slits of frigid disdain. "Do you all really believe I'd let this?" She waved a dismissive hand at our bustling plans. Chaos, pollute our esteemed clubhouse. Her tone dripped with disdain, as if the idea of vibrancy was the most horrifying aberration she could imagine. My stomach tightened. Did we dare challenge her? The once bustling atmosphere now teetered on the very precipice of a high-stakes showdown. "Karen," I called out, adrenaline surging as I thundered toward her, spatula brandished like a scepter of righteousness. The crowd slowly gathered behind me, the rhythm of my heartbeat forging kaleidoscopic encouragement. "This isn't chaos. This is freedom. We are cultivating community with pancakes, smoothies, and strawberry shortcake virtue. If you can host spoon-waving HOA meetings, we can host a culinary carnival." The room erupted, neighbors cheering while they punctuated my words with enthusiastic claps, proving to Karen that the tide had irrevocably turned. The sheer audacity of it all left a tingle radiating through my core. Surely, she was faced with a very real crisis of control, and I envisioned myself a hero, spatula-wielding warrior of the people against the frivolous tyranny of bylaws. Yet Karen's presence loomed large, a formidable barrier whose power threatened to devour the very fabric of unity we'd built. She scoffed, "You think I'm going to let you turn this clubhouse into a whimsical fairground while the HOA standards loom overhead?" The frazzle in her voice only added to the comedy. Her struggle was painfully transparent, as if she couldn't grasp how the once tightly clutched chains of her rule were now rusting. But I stood firm against her intimidating facade, emboldened by my neighbors. "You know, Karen," I countered, "people flourish in an environment where laughter and creativity thrive. It's the very spirit of a community." Plus, what you consider chaos is simply the newfound pulse of joy. The sight of her fuming face almost tempted me to giggle. It was hard to imagine the dreaded OA meeting becoming this absurdly entertaining. Even as Karen struggled to construct a rebuttal, I sensed something beneath her frayed exterior beginning to shift. A flicker of doubt? Perhaps our glorious culinary uprising had rendered her momentarily speechless. "Oh," I added dramatically, "and we might even consider giving away free samples of the smoothies." At this, the neighbors collectively gasped, and the gridlocked expression on Karen's face morphed into sheer horror. I had struck a nerve. The idea of free anything, especially health-filled concoctions, sounded downright sinful to her realm of bylaw-based order. I seized the moment, adding, "Imagine people flooding in for blend-offs and veggie tosses. It could become our neighborhood's pride." Laughter erupted across the room, a sweet resurrection of energy fueling my momentum. We were painting the clubhouse with defiance. Her outburst about chaos and disregard for authority echoed off the walls as I reveled in my moment of victorious defiance. "You think you're so clever, Jordan, but you're merely prolonging your eviction notice. You're going to regret this laughing matter," she spat, voice quaking with the depth of an impending volcanic eruption, her fiery demeanor almost hilarious now. The community's surge of laughter and cheer made it clear we weren't backing down, shifting the power dynamics entirely in my favor. I wore that spatula like a badge of honor, shifting from desperate outsider to rightful defender of laughter and creativity. The culinary carnival would not just be delicious, it was a stake of our future. As the crowd started to rally behind me, it struck me just how ridiculous this whole situation had become. Here I was, a man evicted for a rogue picket, about to hold a revolution in the name of pancakes, smoothies, and playful defiance. And somewhere in that delightful chaos, in a moment of sheer absurdity, I had become the vanguard of a new era, an unwitting symbol of a resistance that questioned conformity with a spatula in hand. Tension simmered, laughter flowed freely, and as I glanced around to the bright faces of my fellow rebels, I realized we weren't just standing for pancakes. We were standing for the right to embrace life with whimsy and joy. So now, with the clubhouse as our canvas, who knew what culinary adventures awaited us next? Would the HOA's wrath shift to playful engagement? Or would Karen unleash her final devastating blow? Time would tell, but I was ready to turn that spatula for whatever delicious confrontations awaited us. As I stood there, my disbelief echoing through the halls of my mind, I watched the HOA board members march toward my fenced-in backyard like an army ready to seize the day, or perhaps seize my soul. Ruth, she who emanated entitlement like a perfume soaked in desperation, declared that I was in violation of an ancient law written before modern civilization, learned the meaning of fun. With her trusty clipboard as an extension of her very being, she detailed how my fence, a beautiful patchwork of reclaimed wood and passion, was now an imminent safety threat. I would like to argue that the only real danger was the eye-roll potential of listening to her drone on about community standards. But alas, here we were. I couldn't even manage a half-hearted retort before they began tossing my beloved DIY furniture into a truck, like it was trash day on a very bad episode of Hoarders. What should have been a calm Saturday morning coffee ritual morphed into a bizarre, live-action reenactment of the Great American Eviction, except my possessions were the cast members playing themselves in this absurd tragedy. As they threw my vintage beanbag chair into the truck as though it were unsightly garbage, I felt my heart race with indignation. Who takes a beanbag chair as a grievance against community decorum? It was like throwing away art. Mason, who had sidled up to the scene like an innocent bystander at an unsettling circus, couldn't help but chuckle softly. "Dude, did you really just get evicted for a fence picket?" His bemusement was the only thread holding my spirit above water at that moment. A dull, sinking sensation filled my gut at the sheer ridiculousness of it all. "Evicted?" I spluttered, erupting with barely contained flabbergast. "You realize this is a DIY project, right? I handcrafted that with love and a YouTube tutorial." I punctuated my statement with the kind of wide-eyed incredulity usually reserved for soap opera cliffhangers. Ruth's blue eyes, framed by her perma-scowl, widened slightly, a fleeting glimpse of humanity before the iron facade slid back into place, locking away all semblance of empathy. "Jordan, the safety of the neighborhood is paramount," she declared, her lips pressing into a thin, unyielding line that could rival a rusty fence itself. It was during this exchange that I realized voicing rational arguments to the likes of her was akin to spitting into a hurricane, absolutely futile. Once the eviction had been finalized in a judicial kerfuffle of clipboard-slapping monotony, I found myself locked outside my own life, standing on the same sidewalk that had never felt so foreign. Real estate had always been about location, 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 but on this day, it became about squatting in my own community clubhouse like some bizarre adult version of Goldilocks. Why not? With the brigade having the audacity to kick me to the curb, my DIY dreams had transformed into an unyielding resolve to turn this whole fiasco around. I would make their beloved clubhouse my throne, a symbol of rebellion against their tyrannical regime, even if the furniture consisted mostly of communal sofas and outdated board games. Mason, fueled by a mix of sympathy and good-natured mischief, pledged to help me execute my plan. "Dude, it'll be legendary," he proclaimed, already rifling through his bag for his most treasured board games. I could almost see the wheels turning in his head as he concocted the perfect mixture of havoc and hilarity to unleash upon the HOA. In no time, we were strategizing Operation Clubhouse King, which involved commandeering the tiny kitchenette for midnight snack raids and turning the ping-pong table into a makeshift throne adorned with random pillows found strewn about. After all, if life hands you chaos, you might as well make a game out of it. I settled into my temporary kingdom with an unshakable glee, anticipating exaggerated HOA alerts about how community standards had diminished to king levels of impropriety. I wouldn't just be an intruder, I would be a monarch living in defiance. Day by day, I crafted my reign with outrageous ideas, like game nights full of laughter, everyone sporting feather boas in solidarity. And let's not forget the bohemian boombox that pumped my playlist of empowerment tunes to remind everyone of how absurd Karen and her comrades could be. The legendary celebratory dance parties at 3 in the morning, those would further streamline my rebellion. After all, if they thought one missing Picket warranted my exile, I had every intention of making my time in the clubhouse a spectacle worthy of a documentary. With Mason as my right-hand man, and the tight-knit community bustling with newfound hilarity, I reveled in dreams of my victorious return while snatching every moment from my string of misadventures. The HOA hadn't merely evicted me, they had inadvertently catalyzed a revolution. I could only wonder how long it would take them to notice their clubhouse had transformed into a joyous den of rebellion, where laughter echoed between the walls, dancing shadows painted the corners, and freedom tasted like the finest artisanal cheese from the community's vegan potluck. Would this revolution end with my triumphant return, or leave me crowned as the neighborhood jester? The question danced tantalizingly on the edge of my chaos, an absurd twist I was eager to explore. The second morning of my unsolicited reign as Clubhouse King dawned with a spectacularly ridiculous shenanigan, the Great Pancake Palooza. Armed with a spatula in one hand and a stack of fluffy pancakes taller than the HOA's list of rules in the other, I announced my intention to host a breakfast buffet for the local residents. It's the least I could do to welcome myself to my new home. I guffawed, spinning in circles like a toddler at a birthday party, strutting around my makeshift kingdom with confidence rivaling any extravagant monarch. Mason rapidly became my loyal court jester, donning an apron emblazoned with "Kiss the Cook" in obnoxious neon colors and flipping pancakes with the kind of flair one expects at circus performances. Around us, we could already hear the grumbles of curious HOA members peeking through the windows, their confusion palpable as they weighed the merits of free pancakes against our scandalous decorum. As the smell of freshly cooked pancakes wafted through the air, I couldn't help but chuckle, knowing that this breakfast could either be my first act of defiance or the fuel for their outrage. "Just imagine their horror, Mason," I whispered conspiratorially. The infamous Jordan Wells, reduced from a DIY enthusiast to a pancake slinger in the name of rebellion. It's poetic. We served our fluffy creations with a side of organic, gluten-free syrup, more due to Mason's dietary quirks than any commitment to modern health trends, while the gathering crowd outside continued to murmur like wolves, contemplating whether this lone sheep was worth chase. My heart raced with a mix of thrill and nervousness, half wondering if I would soon receive my eviction notice again, this time delivered with a side of blueberry pancakes. Just as I started to envision myself crowned with a regal pancake tiara, Karen Strickland strutted through the door, her bobbed hair bobbing with noteworthy indignation. The expression on her face was comical, a bewildered mixture of outrage and begrudging curiosity as she faced the cacophony within. "What in the name of neighborhood harmony is going on here?" she bellowed, the commanding tone sending shivers down my spine. Alas, Laughter quickly returned as I caught Mason in his second pancake catapult, this time sending a syrupy disc hurtling towards the wall. "It's called brunch, Karen. Care for a bite?" I responded with my most disarming smile, knowing full well she'd hate every sugary, syrup-laden moment of it. Standing there, her clipboard tightly clutched, it seemed truly unfathomable that anyone could be rendered speechless. "Brunch? This is a disgrace." Karen spat, her hands flying wildly in frantic harmony with her rising agitation. "You can't just commandeer community property like this. I have half a mind to call an emergency meeting." "Ah, the emergency meeting," a phrase that danced through my head like a deranged musical number. "Many HOA bylaws state our clubhouse is to foster community engagement," I retorted cheekily, producing a tattered copy of their rulebook from my back pocket as if it were a magic wand. "And I, dear Karen, am merely fulfilling the role of community planner in a way that no one could have anticipated." It felt exhilarating to watch her fume, her immaculate blouse wrinkling with her every exasperated breath. If she were a cartoon character, steam would have billowed from her ears. Mason, always one to add fuel to the fire, or perhaps flour to the pancakes, chimed in with a mock seriousness reminiscent of an overzealous public speaker. "Exactly, Karen. In the spirit of community engagement, we have declared this breakfast an open invitation. Care for a pancake?" Unfazed, she narrowed her eyes, simmering wonderfully in the chaos. "This isn't over, Jordan," she hissed, finally turning her heel and marching out, no doubt plotting ways to re-establish her faded authority. I couldn't help but grin with a blend of triumph and exhilaration. She had underestimated both my resolve and the community's growing curiosity. One day, they'll write the rise of Jordan Wells, king of Clubhouse in history books, I declared, and Mason howled with laughter as the remaining onlookers began to crowd in for our breakfast feast, seeking refuge from the HOA's ever-watchful eyes. As I flipped my final pancake, I recognized that, just like the fluffy breakfast items before me, every spatula flip also brought forth renewed challenges. Challenges I was more than ready to face head-on, frosting and all. I reveled in that transient moment, surrounded by laughter, camaraderie, and the subtle reminder that sometimes the tools for uprising were simple and delicious. The absurdity of it all outstripped the initial dread of eviction, transforming into momentum in a delightful dance of rebellion. Perhaps Karen would eventually strike back with her board of passionate HOA defenders, but not today. Today, it was Pancake City, a celebration of resilience, a symbol of the spirit I could never let down. Would my act of culinary hilarity lead to further absurd clashes with the HOA, or could it forge bonds amongst community members seeking reprieve from authoritarian nonsense? Only time would tell. The day after my pancake coup unfolded like a live sitcom, complete with laugh tracks I could almost hear echoing through the air. It was clear. I'd inadvertently launched myself into the role of neighborhood bard, poetically unraveling tales of rebellion against the tyrannies of Karen Strickland and her HOA minions. To my utter delight, the breakfast had already sparked ridiculous rumors. One neighbor claimed they spotted Karen at the local Starbucks, nervously checking her phone for urgent texts from the HOA board. Goodness knows what catastrophic meeting she had called in vain just to trap me, a pancake-slinging vagabond in her clutches. But not today, Queen Karen. Her kingdom had been thrown into delightful chaos, and all I had to wield were syrup-soaked spatulas and a heart full of absurdity. Amidst the lively after-party chatter, I locked eyes with Mason, who was already plotting my next moves with the enthusiasm of a kid at a candy store. "Bro, we could totally theme this," he exclaimed, gesticulating wildly, nearly knocking over a half-finished pancake tower. "Imagine Taco Tuesdays, or wait for it, Wing Wednesdays." I chuckled, envisioning our neighbors unexpectedly waltzing into the clubhouse for a rotating menu of culinary chaos where even a rogue Sushi Saturday might pop up. The very thought sent me into peals of laughter. I could practically see our HOA's collective heads exploding at the idea of free sushi rolled out on bamboo mats and hosted by yours truly, the newly ordained Clubhouse King. The artistry of rebellion lay in not just the protest, but the sheer delight of absurdity we would create together. As word spread, more residents began trickling in, drawn by the allure of homemade breakfast and the spectacle of my burgeoning reign. An eclectic mix formed, embodying the exact opposites of HOA ideals. I like to think they were my loyal subjects, tired of cloistered beige lifestyles that felt more like prisons than homes. A yoga mom in yoga pants struck a pose in the corner, while an elderly gentleman, bless his heart, questioned whether I could cook spaghetti Thursdays instead. My eyes sparkled, relishing the bizarre camaraderie that sprouted within the clubhouse walls. The seriousness of bylaws and fines melted away like ice cream on a hot summer day as laughter filled the air, warming the hearts that had so long been suffocated by the stifling HOA commands. But from across the room I spotted it, the unmistakable ball of fury known as Karen making her dramatic entrance, flanked by her equally solemn board member, Ruth. The titanic showdown had arrived faster than I anticipated. "Jordan," she shouted, voice pitchy with that distinct, "I'm here to ruin your fun," authority. "This ends today. How dare you manipulate my beloved community and turn our sacred clubhouse into a circus?" I took a moment to zip my jacket. It wasn't just a line, it was a battle flag against the impending storm. The room momentarily hushed, and the tension hung thick like syrup. But my resolve was practically glow in the dark. "This was mine now! Karen, darling," I sweetly called back, fighting hard to suppress an uncontrollable grin that danced at the corners of my mouth. "You should really join the festivities. The pancakes are gluten-free, perfect for the weight of your indignation." Mason backed me up by embellishing the moment with an absurdly exaggerated flip of a spatula, earning a round of cheers and chuckles from our growing assembly of neighbor allies. It was beyond glorious. Her face turned various shades of crimson, as if caught under the sweltering heat of my stove, and in that moment, I basked in an exhilarating cocktail of glory and rebellion. Watching her squirm while I amused myself and the crowd felt a bit like a dream, a delightful wake-up call against the relentless boredom of fines, restrictions, and dreary neighborhood meetings. In response, Karen abruptly brandished her clipboard, holding it like a weapon of mass frustration. "I've had enough of your antics. I'm issuing a formal warning. This is a legal matter." The words turned into a comical chant as the crowd began murmuring half-heartedly in deadpan imitation. "A legal matter. A legal matter." The OA's threats had morphed into something positively laughable, a clumsy ballet performed by a bewildered cast of self-appointed authority figures. My former circumstances had been top-notch absurd. I couldn't have scripted this any better had I tried. The outrage was supposed to tighten the noose of conformity around me, yet instead they handed me the spotlight on a silver platter, and I intended to use it until every last ounce of darkness had been banished. With the torrent of drama swirling around me and my delightfully rebellious brethren rallying against the tyranny of our community overlords, I fully embraced my role as the king of this impromptu carnival. In that joyous momentum, I concocted plans that involved crafting flyers for magical movie nights and cheese plate Fridays, complete with cheeky cartoons that would surely get on Karen's last nerve. I felt exhilaration bubbling within, rising as I realized this was more than a fight. It was a celebration of living fully, unencumbered by absurd rules. With a growing smile plastered on my face, I addressed my future audience. "Fear not, people. Here in the land of pancake empowerment, the fun shall never end. Who's ready for some tacos next week?" The energy electrified the room, reminding me that rebellion is often best served with a side of laughter. After all, how absurdly wonderful would it be to turn her legal threats into running gags? Yes, let the games begin. Just as I was preparing to elaborate on the glorious journey of the pancake revolution, Karen launched herself into a tirade worthy of Shakespeare's most melodramatic characters. "You think this is some kind of game, Jordan?" Her voice sliced through the camaraderie like a dull knife, managing to suck the joy right out of the pancake-scented air. "You've turned our community space into a circus, a level of chaos we simply will not tolerate." Oh, bless her little authoritarian heart. To me, this was an amusement park of culinary delights, and nothing would taste sweeter than the delicious irony drizzling over her indignation, like the maple syrup cascading over my freshly cooked flapjacks. There it was again, that dissonance between my vibrant revolt and her crumbling reputation, daring me to lean fully into the chaos while leaving her backpedaling into mediocrity. With a wicked gleam in my eye, I leaned in closer, channeling my inner master of mischief. "Ah, but Karen, you see, this is precisely what community is about." I flourished my spatula like a mic drop and gestured towards the absurd gathering thriving within the clubhouse walls, laughter ricocheting off the dull beige background, mismatched chairs occupied by gleeful neighbors who just minutes ago may have been tightly wound by the rules and regulations of our humdrum HOA. People coming together, sharing food, tacos, cupcakes. Does it get any better than this? The crowd erupted into cheers while Karen's glare could freeze boiling water. The climate was palpable. In one corner, someone was already scribbling Taco Tuesday's plans on what looked like the back of a takeout menu. At this point, I was nothing less than a siren of shenanigans on a windswept sea of neighborhood norms, and I could see Mason grinning from ear to ear as he hopped on an old school table, leaning into the rhythm of the growing chorus. And if pancakes are protesters, I say we light the BBQ for burgers against bureaucracy, he declared, brandishing a spatula like a sword. The crowd whooped in unison, carrying out their makeshift chants. Burgers against bureaucracy echoed through the previously sterile hall, nails on chalkboard to Karen's ears. With each shout, I could feel our movement crystallizing, a weirdly beautiful protest emerging from the heart of ennui and overregulation, topped off with a hearty dollop of absurdity. But just as I was about to unleash the ultimate freedom from fences, battle cry, Karen embarked on an entirely unsolicited insult tour of my culinary extravaganza. "This isn't responsible living, Jordan," she huffed, waving her clipboard as if it were a magic wand capable of conjuring some sort of order. "It's indulgent nonsense. The dining hall isn't a fast food joint." Bless her heart, really. Here was a woman who professed to uphold community values, yet stood firmly in her own gilded tower of entitlement, wielding her love of fine china like a dagger. I turned my back to her momentarily, dramatically rolling my eyes as if engaged in an epic Shakespearean duel of frustration. "How's your fine china holding up against the weight of your indignation?" I retorted to a chorus of laughter swelling from the crowd, the revitalization of ridiculousness sweeping over the reclaiming spirit of our clubhouse escapades. As someone yelled, "I bring the guacamole for the tacos!" I had a delightful revelation. This wasn't just about waffles or tacos, even though I might have fancied myself the Lord of Brunch. It was about reclaiming the essence of community spirit forged long before Karen had decided baked potato days and snowflake decorations were the height of luxury. The ensuing merriment was a protest against a soulless HOA hellbent on reining its subjects under the draconian thumb of purely beige lifestyles. A life lived in fear of fines, missed schedules, and overt criticism had, somehow, morphed into a playground of shared experiences where my neighbors erupted into belly laughs over the ridiculousness of our predicament, and I was here for it, ready to hoist the banner of glorious chaos high. This was not merely a fight. This was an awakening that hung thick in the shimmering summer air, stamped out Karen's attempts to depress not just me but an entire community. I gestured for a moment of quiet, raising an oversized spatula high in the air to rally my comrade. "All right, friends, if you're ready to join the ranks of delicious debauchery and culinary capers, muster your creativity for next week. It will be Pasta Palooza." Roars of exuberance erupted, drowned in dreams of digging forks into rich sauces rather than attending another dreary HOA meeting where Karen usually rained her misery upon us. My heart soared as I gazed into the faces of my fellow rebels, nonconformists who sought liberation from the burdens of conformity. Could there even be a better reason to refuse to bow down to monolithic rules? Little did I know that the fire of rebellion had already caught the attention of the other loyal HOA members who seemed torn between the preservation of their precious rules and the palpable joy radiating from my pancake rebellion. Yet, somehow, while Karen stood in frozen disbelief, the whole scene had struck a nerve. Who would have thought it took the brilliance of breakfast banter to highlight what it truly meant to live confidently and colorfully? Awareness blossomed. I could either watch as she drove home every single rule to shut us down, or I could harness the energy to rally against her perpetual martyred air. The battle lines had been drawn. Who would win? The Pancake King or the Queen of Conformity? The only thing I knew for certain was that this neighborhood civil war was just heating up. Thanks for sticking around with me through the chaos to the end. Want more high-stakes HOA drama? Check out our recent HOA clash with the video on the right, or let YouTube pick your next wild ride with the video on the left. Whichever way you go, buckle up. There's plenty more HOA insanity on the way. Tune in again for more HOA chaos.